Now, yesterday in the United Kingdom, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, said that our bushfires should be a wake-up call to the world, that more needs to be done to address climate change. Tina, it's all well and good for the world to use our bushfires to point to climate change. It was an obvious thing to do. But they're also pointing the finger at us, Australia, like as if, well, the fact that we've only just kept pace with our United Nations commitments, the Paris Agreement, we've allowed bushfires to burn out of control in Australia. There's no connection between the two.
Absolutely none. And do you know, Chris, I noticed they don't offer any solutions. They also don't mention the hundreds of arsonists that have contributed far greater than climate change to these fires. So, you know, I think they should offer their support and concern, and but, you know, stay out of our politics.
Prince Charles also had a statement to make. This is part of it.
We wanted to say how much we've been thinking of all those remarkable, courageous, determined firefighters who've done so much and worked ceaselessly to exhaustion. And we feel so deeply for the families of those who've been lost, who've lost their lives in the course of carrying out their remarkable duties as only they can do. And we also think of all the Australian wildlife that is destroyed in these appalling infernos, let alone everything else. I know, we both know, just how incredibly special and resilient the Australian people are.
Campbell Newman, it's interesting. If I go back to the Piers Morgan input and the fight with Craig Kelly, while Craig let himself open for criticism in that particular interview, I've got to say, they're pointing the finger at Australia as if we created the fires. Well, hang on a minute, there were 183 alleged incidences of arson, which an expert has told me would have stopped 3/4 of the fires if they weren't trying to burn the joint down. As well as that, 3 of the greatest populous nations on earth are the ones who are the greatest emitters, not Australia.
Well, you know, that's dead right. And, you know, one of the things that I suppose that Sarah Hanson-Young, you were talking about it before, said that in a way it was ridiculous, but was also sort of right. Not that Scott Morrison would ever do it, but the message really to the main emitters like the US, etc., should be, well, if you believe in climate change, they're the ones who are going to do something about it. But look, Chris, we actually have created our own problem. Let's not beat around the bush. Yeah, we've had the arsonists, but we've had 35 to 40 years of bad land management practices.
Yep, too right.
We've turned state forests into national parks. We've allowed the vegetation to go berserk. We've restricted property owners, not just farmers, but other property owners' rights to protect their property with hazard reduction, burns, and also removal of vegetation near their properties. And we reap what we have sowed. That's the bottom line. You know, and I hope that there is a Royal Commission out of this. I think the Prime Minister should have one. It's of such magnitude that it needs it. But in those terms of reference, it's got to put a spotlight on land management practices. And that's the thing we need to deal with. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Yeah,
Tina, I spoke to a farmer on the program this time last night, and he was going through what was required by his local council for him to get rid of about 10 metres on the edge of his property to prevent a fire taking his property out and his livelihood. And the things that he had to was required to do and pay, and reports he had to get, and trees that he had to mark, and all of that rigmarole, he didn't bother because it was just too hard. They've made it too hard at local council and state government level, and this is why we've got the fuel loads we have.
Well, as I said, Chris, on some councils there have been members who are in charge of looking after the environment and dictating these local policies that have stood as Greens candidates. Now, I have a daughter on a fairly large farm in Mudgee, and it's ridiculous what they have to do. But I would like to see you drag Bob Carr into this studio, Chris, and interview him, because I think he's got a lot to answer for.
Yes, set up national parks, which was fabulous, all well and good.
Well, Chris, I've got to say this too. In an effort to be totally upfront about this, the dirty secret here too, though, and I say this, Tina, you know, it's our side of politics too, who generally speaking have been as weak as the proverbial when it comes to this stuff, have not had the gut. So the Berejiklian government needs to have a long, hard look at itself. For example, and down in South Australia, they've only been in a short period of time, but they need to look at land management practices in our SA. So, look, it's not just about the Labor Party, it's not about the Greens, it's about politicians who need to stand up for property owners, property rights and sensible land management.
Campbell, you're 100% right. All I was stating was that Bob Carr did start this off with the preservation of parks.
No. I'm in furious agreement, Tina, no doubt about that. Absolutely.